This is a program about the 1992 fifth grade art program titled Tumbling through Wonderland. This annual program for Missoula area fifth graders is sponsored by the Art Associates of Missoula. This year, the program centered on an exhibit of original picture book art borrowed from the Henry Fywell Gallery in New York City. Several groups participated in this event: the Art Museum, the Art Associates, Missoula Public Library, Missoula Calligraphers Guild, local bookstores, Missoula Public Radio, KUFM, and most importantly, the public schools. The program consisted of several parts. First, the kids wrote and illustrated their own books. Then they visited the art show at the museum. When they were through there, they took a historical walking tour over to the library, about 4 blocks. At the library, they first created an illuminated letter to go with their book, and then they heard a few of the books that featured the artwork they had seen at the museum. Then they toured the library, and those kids who didn't have library cards got them. Finally, the original books they wrote in class were put on display at Southgate Mall during the annual Young Authors Conference. The children used throughout this video were from Mrs. Torgeson's 5th grade class at Prescott School, Missoula, Montana. The first part of the program was a visit from an author. The Art Associates provided classroom instruction for the 5th graders in the Missoula area. They brought in local author Peggy Christian to teach the kids a little about writing.
You guys are going to create a book, and you're going to do writing on it, and you're going to do some illustrations for it, and you're going to bind it up, and it's going to be shown at the mall at the Young Authors Contest. So, the first part of this program is I'm going to give you some ideas for stories that you can write. And then you'll be writing this over the next month or so. An illustrator's going to come in and give you some ideas for illustrations. And then when you go to the library, on the day that you go to the art museum, you're going to be illuminating a letter for your book. And an illuminated letter is the first letter of the first page of your book. And you draw pictures and illuminate it with gold, and it'll be real pretty, like the old manuscripts that they used to have. And then you'll bind your book and put it in the mall for everybody to see. So it's going to be a long project. And I'm going to give you some ideas today for ways that you could write what's called a fractured fairy tale. It's a book.
Here she is talking about fractured fairy tales. A fractured fairy tale is an old story told a new way. She's showing the popular fractured fairy tale, the true story of the 3 little pigs. It's told from the viewpoint of the wolf. He claims he was framed. Then she compares an old African folktale about Anansi the spider to her book, The Old Coot. The Old Coot is a Western character who tells tall tales that are amazingly similar to the Anansi stories. She tells the kids how they too can use old stories to write new stories. She explains that by changing the viewpoint and the setting, they can create original stories.
But Anansi said, "Oh, how true, how true." Okay, so that's the story that I started with. Now, I changed the who, character, and I made the character the Old Coot, who's the main character in my stories. And he's an old prospector who's turned storyteller. And I changed the setting, and I made it the Old West, and it's about the middle of the 1800s. And I changed the plot just a little bit, but not much. I think you'll recognize the first story in this story. This is called The Old Coot and the Auguring Match. In the old days, when the cowboys would get together around a campfire and tell tall tales, they called it an auguring match. Every once in a while, there comes a time in a fellow's life when it seems like his luck has gotten stuck in quicksand and is sinking fast. Just when he thinks it's about to go under, though, he finds a rope lying around and manages to pull it out. Now, that's just the way things were last spring when I was roaming the range up near
Next, on a different day, Missoula artist N.J. Taylor visited the classroom to talk to the kids about illustrating their books.
How many of you like to draw?
Me too, me too, me too.
Yeah. So And somebody said once, well, they didn't like the illustration in the book, and I was surprised. I said, well, why not? And they said, because when you illustrate, sometimes when you're reading something in your imagination, and then you see an illustration doesn't quite match what...
She explained several techniques and then passed out art materials and worked with the kids. Here she's explaining how to draw something showing the back of the head. She was very encouraging, telling the kids, yes, they could draw and be artists. The kids really enjoyed this activity. This program took place over the course of about 4 months. They didn't write a book and illustrate it all in one day. They had a writing lesson on one day and an art lesson a few weeks later, and finally, a few weeks later, they took a field trip to the museum and library. Over 30 fifth grade classes participated in this program. The library tour guides, the museum docents, N.J. Taylor, Peggy Christian, and the calligraphers each performed their part of the program every day for 6 weeks to accommodate all 30 classes. Next stop, the Missoula Museum of the Arts. Now the kids are at the Missoula Museum of the Arts to view the show, Pictures of a Child's World. Here, Deborah Mitchell of the museum staff gives them an overview of the show. The classes were divided into 3 sections after this overview so they could appreciate the artwork in small groups. Each group had their own docent or tour guide. After the overview, the docents started guiding the children through the show. Here, Chief Docent Kim Birch shows the kids what an original manuscript looks like. In addition to the artwork from New York, the museum had a show featuring Missoula area authors and artists. This manuscript belongs to local respected science writer Dorothy Patton. Kim showed the students how the editor marked up the manuscript for errors and changes. Even Dorothy Patton doesn't write it perfectly the first time. She made the corrections, sent it back to the editor, and here's the finished book. This is Missoula artist Joe Bodie's original artwork. All the docents were volunteers, and they did an excellent job. The museum provided training for the docents, and they taught them techniques to share the art with the kids. Here's a docent guiding children through the tour. She's asking the children to compare the original artwork with the book. She's asking them about the differences in the colors and size, and also pointing out where the text is printed in the book. I believe this tour and these techniques really help the kids gain an appreciation of fine art. Artists represented in this show included such well-known children's book illustrators as Trina Schart-Hyman, James Marshall, Richard Ejelski, and Peter Siss. Many have won the prestigious Caldecott Medal, which is like the Academy Award of Children's Book Illustration. Here is one of Caldecott medalists Leo and Diane Dillon's illustrations from the book The Porcelain Cat. Next stop, the Missoula Public Library. The first thing the kids did at the library was create an illuminated letter for their story.
Very complex like this. Can you tell what letter this is? An O. And that's important that you still be able to read it because it is a letter and it has a function. And so you want to be able to tell what the letter is. But even with this much decoration, you can still read it. So you can be really fancy with your letters. You should do whatever you want to do that suits your story that you've written, or whatever you as the artist decide your letter should look like.
That was Amity Parks of the Missoula Calligraphy Guild explaining how to make an illuminated letter. The art associates provided all the materials for this project, right down to the glittery gold pens that highlighted the letters. Here the kids are busily illuminating the first letter for their stories. You can tell by looking at them how much they enjoyed it. Here is some work from a member of the Missoula Calligraphers Guild. The kids didn't get quite this good from their 1-hour lesson, although some got close. Next, the library tour.
This is where I really work, at the Missoula Public Library. And so today it's my privilege to get to show you guys around the library. And what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about the library while we're still downstairs. And then we're going to go upstairs together as a group, and we're going to stay together. And we're going to look at the different sections of the library, and then we're going to use the computer for a couple of minutes just so I can show you some things. That card. I have this really neat thing that one of the librarians here let me borrow as long as I had to promise I would take really good care of it. This is the old card catalog from when the Missoula Public Library was over at the museum. They told you that that used to be the library. This is 100 years old, 1897. This is the books that the library owned 100 years ago. There's books in here like Around the World in 80 Days, Little Women, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, books that were famous 100 years ago. And oh, this is by the same author and illustrator, Arthur Urink's, Richard E. Jelski. They're the team that does these books. Bravo, Minsky. Minsky is also a genius, just like Hud.
Isn't that the picture where they're hearing?
Yes. So what Minsky, he discovers electricity, and then he invents the toaster. And then he invents the light bulb, and then he invents the car. I told you, he's a genius. Then he invents the washing machine.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Finally, he invents rocket ships. But the best thing about Minsky is the way he sings, and everybody loves the way he sings, and that's what's happening in the picture that's at the museum. Yes, and that offers you say bravo, right? Bravo, bravo, when you love something. He's getting ready to sing, and they're all very excited about it. Almost all of them.
This is a close-up of the original art from the museum by Richard E. Jelski from the book Bravo, Minsky. I'm showing the kids the book and talking about the story. We're discussing why not everyone loves Minsky. Now we're trooping upstairs to tour the library itself.
When you're in the library, I can help you find books, or I can help you with the computer, or I can put books on hold for you. Lots of things like that. So this is where I usually sit. Right now we're in the juvenile fiction sign. You can see my What does that mean? What does it mean?
It means like fiction books that like it's for
That's right, it's kids. What it means is that in the computer and on the shelves, J stands for juvenile. Then we put these books in alphabetical order by the author's last name, so I grabbed this out with the rest of the Cleary books. More words, less pictures. They're for kids your age.
And the finished product? The books the children wrote and illustrated on display at Southgate Mall during the Young Authors Conference. Jack and the Leprechaun. These are their fractured fairy tales. You can see the illuminated letters they used to begin their stories. Snow White and the Three Pigs. They did have to reduce the letters a little to fit on the page. Handsome and the Beast. Rapunzel's Hair. Some of these stories were read on KUFM, Missoula Public Radio. Everyone who was involved in this program, from the librarians who gained new patrons, to the art associates who were thrilled to see the children so enchanted by the art, to the children themselves who were the proud authors and illustrators of their own stories, everyone considered it a success. I'm still rewarded almost daily by children who stop at my desk and say, "Hey, I know you. You showed my class around the library and read us some stories." We've already started planning the 1993 program.
Yeah, Scrooge McDuck. This next one is remember the Dillons, the husband and wife team? This is another one that they did from a book called The Porcelain Cat. I have that book here. If you can find that picture, you can see some of the differences.
Oh, that shows tree reflection in the water.
See these pictures? They put them together here because they're together in the book. You see how this space here is balancing?
This one's a lot darker than that one.
See how this one seems a little bit softer? And then when you print it, it brings out some really hard lines. Remember she talked about cropping. Nothing was cropped off of this one, was it? I think that's because they have these great edges that they didn't. Let's go around the corner here. This painting is by the Provinsons again. This is the third one we've seen of theirs, and it's they've been from 3 different books. This is from a book called Shaker Lane. What do you think of this one? Is it a happy picture? See, that could be like a tornado just came through. Are these people rich or poor? Poor. What shows it then? What are some different things in there? Broken car and their shacks. In this book, this is these people's home, but later on in the book, a reservoir floods this area and they lose their home.
Almost looks like
Yeah, it's like
all of a sudden, it looks like, yeah, the lines coming down, what do you think that is? So that's how you make ranges. So lines start, see the puddles splash.
Yeah, it does. It looks like flowers.
Yeah. So the book is still under the artist.
Look at this. The worm and the boat. Do you think this is part of the picture right here?
Probably. Actually,
Illustration? I thought you wanted. This is probably where they will put the writing. Right. And this one, have you ever heard anyone talk about color reading?
Name the hottest color you've ever read.
This has bad guys in there.
Yeah.
he said, what's it?
No, this is
Put it giant. Put it there.
This is it. Well, he's a famous artist who he did just recently die, but he's a famous artist. This fellow is James Now this is, he has done the giant, this fellow has done the giant in his father's image. So this is like, he's taking his own father. Illuminated letters can be very simple, like this, which is a D, and it's just sort of in a basic grid, not very fancy. Or it can be very complex, like this. Can you tell what letter this is? An O. And that's important, that you still be able to read it, because it is a letter, and it has a function. And so you want to be able to tell what the letter is. But even with this much decoration, you can still read it. So you can be really fancy with your letters. You should do whatever you want to do that suits your story that you've written, or whatever you as the artist decide your letter should look like.
Hey, Harmony, just keep drawing that for the next 10 minutes. I have to leave the camera.
Watching my picture.
That's great.
Some artists just pulling pictures all day. I think it's fun. I saw videos like this. Where we'd be able to do as many pictures as we wanted Look at that. Does it look pretty good?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I did some last night. How is it? He's just fine. He's up around. No, right now he has like 2,100 eyesight. 2,400.
But he did not lose his eye.
No, what happened was it hit the color box and it so it went up his eyelid.
Karen the librarian. This is where I really work, at the Missoula Public Library. And so today it's my privilege to get to show you guys around the library. And what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about the library while we're still downstairs. And then we're going to go upstairs together as a group, and we're going to stay together. And we're going to look at the different sections of the library, and then we're going to use the computer for a couple of minutes just so I can show you some things. And I know that some of you brought back permission slips today, and I'm not sure that they're going to be ready for us because there's only 1 or 2 people up there right now, and it takes a while to get them ready. And if they're not, what I'll do is I'll bring them to your school next week. I have this really neat thing that one of the librarians here let me borrow as long as I had to promise I would take really good care of it. This is the old card catalog from when the Missoula Public Library was over at the museum. They told you that that used to be the library. This is 100 years old, 1897. This is the books that the library owned 100 years ago. There's books in here like Around the World in 80 Days, Little Women, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, books that were famous 100 years ago. And they're all listed in here, and so when you wanted a book in those days, you go into the library, these would be lying around on the tables, you'd pick one up and you'd look through and browse for your book, and then you'd go look on the shelves for that. Okay, there's about 300 books in here. Now the library owns 150,000 books. So how big of a catalog would that make? Yeah. How would you like to come into the library and have to browse through that for the book you wanted?
That's why we have a computer.
That's why we have the computer. That's why we have the computer. You got it. Well, all you have to do is type in what you want, and it kicks it out immediately. It finds that book out of 150,000 books. You can type in the title of the book, the author of the book, or the subject of the book. Or even the series of the book. If you want Hardy Boys or Babysitters or something, you can type it in that way and look it up that way. We didn't used to have that in our old hard catalog either. We really like that feature. It's a pretty nifty thing. Ugg is a cave boy. He's a genius. He invents the bicycle. Way back in those days, can you imagine? Right. And that's the picture you saw, right? And I know I heard some of you talking about how the inaccuracies in this book. My favorite one was that Ugg has a laundry basket. That's great. Yeah, right. Back in those cave days, they had laundry baskets, huh?
Washer dryer.
Oh, this is by the same author and illustrator, Arthur Urink's, Richard E. Jelski. They're the team that does these books. Bravo, Minsky. Minsky is also a genius, just like Ugg.
Isn't that the picture where they're carrying?
Yes. So what Minsky, he discovers electricity, and then he invents the toaster. And then he invents the light bulb, and then he invents the car. I told you, he's a genius. Then he invents the washing machine.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Finally, he invents rocket ships.
I don't believe
But the best thing about Minsky is the way he sings, and everybody loves the way he sings, and that's what's happening in the picture that's at the museum.
opera.
Yes, and at operas you say bravo, right? Bravo, bravo, when you love something. He's getting ready to sing, and they're all very excited about it. Almost all of them. Did you guys see somebody? Did you guys see somebody in the picture that wasn't so excited about the singing?
Oh, yeah, the fat guy.
Yeah, this guy. What's his story anyway?
Maybe he's jealous.
That's what I think. He's jealous. I think he's probably saying, I can sing that good. What's so great about this Minsky guy? It's good. What's so great about this Minsky?
Yeah, right, Corey.
Okay, how's the skill look?
Hey, there's a dime.
Yeah. I'll put it in then.
We're on the main floor of the library. Just like Lamont's and Hennessy's has a children's department and an adult department. You know how they're broken up like that? The library has some different departments too.
Do you like doing that?
I know, so I don't even need to tell you guys this stuff. I'm gonna go really fast. Listen to me. We're in the children's department. I bet you knew that too, huh? The books that are in that room along this wall, these are the easy books. That means they're picture books. They have a lot of pictures like Ugg and not as many words. We put them in order by the author's last name. So that book was written by a guy named Yorinks. It was illustrated by Jelski, but it was written by Yorinks. So we put it on the shelves under Yorinks, and the Y is over there. And you can see that sign hanging down says Easy Books. So in the computer, when the call number location says Easy Books, Yorinks, then you know it's in this department. You can come here and ask for help. When you're in the library, I can help you find books, or I can help you with the computer, or I can put books on hold for you. Lots of things like that. So this is where I usually sit. Right now, we're in the juvenile fiction sign. You can see over here. What does that mean? What does it mean?
It means like fiction books that like it's for
That's right, it's kids. Juvenile means kids. It's just this old-fashioned word that this library still uses, even though we have, yeah, that's how most people think of juvenile delinquents. Anyway, this library still uses that old-fashioned word. And what it means is that in the computer and on the shelves, J stands for juvenile. Then we put these books in alphabetical order by the author's last name, so I grabbed this out with the rest of the Cleary books. More words, less pictures. They're for kids your age.
Okay.